Whether you started playing Flesh and Blood during Welcome to Wraith or after High Seas, welcome to the channel. Flesh and Blood is a hero-centric game with a deep class and talent system. If you haven't already given the game a try, its hero design is the #1 reason why you should try out Flesh and Blood. It does a phenomenal job making each hero feel unique in the world of Wraith. Even if you're playing as a rampaging brute, a show-stopping guardian, a wandering ninja, or an honorable warrior, this game is hands down the best at making you feel like you're playing as your hero. Fab's roster makes up the majority of the game's backbone. Your hero doesn't just determine which cards you can play, but how you'll interact with the core tenets of Flesh and Blood in order to maximize your strengths and minimize your weaknesses to take down opponents. However, it can feel overwhelming trying to figure out which hero is right for you, especially with each set bringing 3 or more new heroes to the fray. Over the past 3 years, I've played dozens of heroes spanning all official Flesh and Blood formats. Even though it took me a while to figure out which kinds of heroes were right for me, I wanted to create a guide that will help you figure out which hero is best for you from the start. With Flesh and Blood's rotation system in mind, I designed this framework so that the steps will continue to be applicable for years to come. Even after Boltyn's Lumina Ascension to Living Legend, this framework should still help you figure out your next hero, even if you've never played with or against them before. If you're ready, let's get started. In order to help you choose your next hero, I've created a 3-step process broken down into concrete steps. The 3 steps are Fab's design principles, hero archetypes, and ending with you ultimately choosing your hero. Not only will this guide help you pick out your next hero, but it should also help you gain a better understanding of the game's nuanced strategy, making you a better player in the process. With the structure laid out, let's kick things off with the first stage, Flesh and Blood's design principles. Before choosing your hero in Flesh and Blood, the first step is to understand the game's building blocks. It's important to start here because each class has a different degree of access to these building blocks. These differences give every hero their own strengths and weaknesses, making each class feel mechanically unique. For example, brutes are great at sending big attacks, but random discard effects prevent them from running too many non-attack actions. On the other hand, wizards are terrible at dealing any physical damage whatsoever. In fact, wizards haven't had a single attack action card printed in the first 15 sets of the game. However, they make up for this by sending difficult to block arcane damage spells, even on their opponent's turn. In addition to each class having their own unique identity, talents can further adjust a hero's access to these building blocks. A great example of this is Bravo's Star of the Show. Even though Guardians can't typically send multiple attacks in a turn, Starvo's Essence of Lightning gives his attacks go again if he can reveal an Ice, Earth, and Lightning card at the start of his turn, making him one of the most broken and aggressive slanted Guardian heroes ever printed to date. Much like Starvo, Aurora's Essence of Lightning also speeds up her game, creating embodiment of lightning tokens to end the game as quickly as possible by providing go again to attacks that wouldn't otherwise have it. On the other hand, Florian's Essence of Earth slows down his game as he needs to methodically decompose Earth cards to his Banish Zone in order to activate his hero ability. However, once his hero ability is activated, he can build up massive stacks of rune chants with his specialization Germinate in order to ultimately close out games. Each hero in the world of Wraith adds their own unique spin to their class and talent combination, creating a range of archetypes and playstyles within each class. With the class and talent components out of the way, let's move on to the core building blocks of Flesh and Blood. These tenets are action points, or how well you can play multiple actions in a turn; resource points, or how you pay costs for cards and activated abilities; intellect, or access to cards, whether that be through drawing cards or playing them from other zones like Graveyard or Banish; life, whether that be through life gain or using life as a resource; power, how strong your stuff is, contrasted by defense, or how well you can prevent your opponent's stuff; and lastly, abilities, or anything that doesn't fit into the categories above. Understanding these core building blocks will help you figure out how a hero prefers to play the game. Classes may either have immediate access to these tenets, ways to set up these tenets for future turns, or ways to reduce opponents' access to these building blocks. For example, ninjas have easy access to action points with go-again attacks like Head Jab. However, Time Snap Potion allows all classes to obtain additional action points on a future turn, but at the cost of running a 0-block item without natural go-again. And while Guardians can't access multiple action points per turn typically, they can play Spinal Crush to prevent opponents from playing more than one action in the turn. Resource points are another way that heroes, classes, and talents are differentiated. Do you prefer pitching reds, yellows, or blues to pay for your cards? Do your cards have additional costs, like discarding cards, banishing cards, or even using different kinds of resources entirely? On top of the average card cost, there are many other cards that can provide additional resources, reduce resource costs, or even make your opponent's cards cost more. Intellect isn't just the number on a hero card's bottom left-hand corner. Rather, it's how well a hero can access cards, whether that's through cycling cards, playing cards out of the banner zone, or other effects. On top of a hero's starting life, there are many ways to augment your own life or reduce your opponent's life total in ways that aren't just attacks. In addition to the standard methods of life gain, life loss, or even using life as a literal resource, some heroes have access to allies, which put additional life points on the board. Power is probably the most common lever used to make classes feel distinct. For example, Guardians have tons of powerful attacks that hit hard, but only once per turn, while Brutes can attack more widely, while still presenting good damage. On the opposite end of the spectrum, many ninja attacks ping for tiny amounts of damage, sending as many attacks as possible each turn. To top it all off, Runeblades have arcane damage mixed in with their physical attacks. And don't forget about Wizards, who play on an entirely different axis, dealing arcane damage with non-attack spells instead. Outside of attack actions and damaging spells, weapon attacks, attack reactions, and amp effects can also help heroes make sure that they're able to deal damage past their opponent's defenses. In order to successfully block incoming damage, defense is another major component of Flesh and Blood. While many actions can be used to defend 2 to 3 physical damage, block cards, defense reactions, and equipment can further improve a hero's defensive prowess. In order to deal with arcane damage from wizards, runeblades, and sometimes illusionists, equipment with arcane barrier, spell void, or other prevention effects can be used to minimize otherwise evasive damage. And while most cards buff defenses, assassins actually have access to cards that reduce their opponent's blocking capabilities, with cards like Shred as well as Tarantula Toxin. And the last design bucket in Fab are abilities, which cover anything unique from the previous categories. There are far too many different abilities to cover in today's video, but these range from Prism's Figments, to Katsu's combos, to Vincett's Runegate attacks, and many more. A lot of heroes also have powerful specializations that further highlight a character's core abilities. There are so many different ways that these components can come together to create unique heroes and mechanics. While this is just a brief primer, let me know if you'd like to see more content discussing Fab design principles like this down in the comments below. As you're looking through the legal heroes available in Blitz or Classic Constructed, try to identify which of these design principles seem most interesting to you. Do you want to send 4, 5, or even more attacks each turn? Do you want to try to slow down your opponent's game to a halt? Or do you want to keep opponents on their toes by playing difficult to block attack reactions? Think about which aspects seem the coolest to you and choose a hero that seems to align with those principles. Now that we've covered the basic design principles, hero archetypes are the next piece to understand. If you've come from other card games, you're probably familiar with the aggro combo control triangle, with mid-range falling somewhere in between aggro and control. However, if you come from fighting games, you're likely used to categorizing fighters as rushdown, zoners, grapplers, or even all-rounders. While not an exact one-for-one translation, the good news is that these archetypes can somewhat be transferred when describing Flesh and Blood heroes. While there are many other great resources describing both sets of terms in Fab, I'm going to link them in the description below. I personally recommend Gorganian Tome's Flesh and Blood is a Fighting Game video, as well as Carol's article about the archetype triangle of Flesh and Blood. Both resources provide some amazing information on how the various archetypes translate to Flesh and Blood, whether that be through card game or fighting game terminology. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to be using the terms rushdown instead of aggro, all-rounder instead of mid-range, control instead of grappler, and setup instead of combo or zoner. However, just like the archetypes in many other games, these are not all-encompassing. Many heroes in Flesh and Blood can play a mixture of strategies, pivoting between multiple archetypes depending on the situation and matchup. With the nomenclature out of the way, let's start with the fastest heroes in the game, rushdowns. Rushdown heroes might be for you if you like finishing your games early by applying as much pressure on your opponent as possible. You win games when you can send as many attacks as possible, keeping your opponent on the back foot. Your games end when either your opponent's life total is reduced to 0, or you've run out of ways to do so. Rushdown heroes win when they can promote their own game plan by using plenty of action points on their own turn, gaining additional resources, giving their attacks extra power, or drawing cards to get over their opponent's defenses. They want attacks that are difficult to fully block, reducing their opponent's life totals as quickly as possible. However, rushdown heroes have stereotypically poor block values. While playing a rushdown hero, you're probably losing the game if you need to pivot to defense, or when you face an opponent who is able to neutralize your onslaught of go-wide attacks. Because of this, rushdown heroes tend to be countered by control heroes who don't mind blocking rushdown's attacks on the spot. Moving on to control. Control heroes might be for you if you like slow, grindy games. If you like playing Control, you're in it for the long game, where good decisions add up in your favor over the course of the game. This playstyle might be for you if you enjoy blocking until you find the perfect pivot turn, stealing tempo to take control of the game. Control heroes in Flesh and Blood prefer cards that block 3 and run many defense reactions to bolster their defenses. On top of that, they have efficient weapon attacks that grind down opponents' life totals, as well as equipment that provides continuous value over the course of the game. Implied in the Archetypes name, Control heroes like controlling their opponents by taking away their options. They do this by neutralizing powerful attacks, taxing their opponent's resources, minimizing access to action points, and running cards that either bottom, discard, or banish cards. Even though Control heroes have good ways to close out games with abilities like Dominate, Intimidate, and other keywords, they struggle to get opponents into lethal ranges quickly. Because of this, Control heroes tend to lose to setup heroes who appreciate the extra time provided in order to set up and build a board state. Unlike Rushdown and Control heroes who try to maximize the offensive and defensive value of each hand respectively, setup heroes play cards that can create payoffs on a future turn. If you like building up a board state or playing combos that perform better than the sum of their individual parts, setup heroes are probably for you. If you like the setup playstyle, you enjoy building auras, allies, or items to create incredibly powerful future turns. You don't mind blocking out or taking an off turn if it means that you can survive until your payoff turn, where you can deal far more damage than your opponent could ever possibly prevent. Many setup heroes have abilities that allow them to build up value on the board, including but not limited to Light Hero's Souls, Shadow Hero's Banish Zones, Necromancer's Graveyard, or even building up resources on the board like Mechanologist items, Dromai's Ash, or Fang's Fealty tokens. This can also take the form of pummeling a Command and Conquer, setting up the first half of the combo in Arsenal until the second card is drawn and the time is right. Alternatively, setup heroes run powerful cards that build off of one another, like Katsu's combo lines, Kano's Aether Wildfire, or Acilio's Volzar the Lightning Rod. In each of these cases, the combo payoffs get stronger the more cards that can be combined, so these heroes don't mind arsenaling a core piece of their game plan in order to combo off at the right time. Setup heroes put their opponents on a clock, and they demand an answer as soon as possible. If they're allowed to play their cards in the right combination, their odds of winning the game skyrocket, making them naturally favored into Control heroes. However, the payoffs for setting up are balanced by the risk of delaying that value of a combo until a future turn. Rushdown heroes can often apply sufficient pressure to take down setup heroes before they can find their combo pieces. To make matters worse, many setup cards don't block well, such as items without a defensive value. Additionally, setup cards can be countered with cards like Smashing Performance, Roiling Fissure, Gravekeeping, and many more. Furthermore, combo cards placed in Arsenal are almost always at risk of being disrupted by a well-timed Command and Conquer, Leave No Witnesses, or Plow Under. Ultimately, setup heroes need to balance their combos with sufficient defenses to survive until their payoff turns arrive. While some heroes are best suited for Rushdown, Control, or Setup playstyles, there are many heroes who can switch between these different playstyles. This kind of strategy gives rise to all-rounder heroes, who can adjust their play patterns to maximize their chances of winning in a given situation. If you like gaining an edge by adapting to your opponent's playstyle, all-rounders might be for you. All-rounders are able to utilize tools from the other Archetypes toolkits, alternating between offense, defense, or setup when needed. All-rounders have some degree of access to many of Fab's building blocks, which allows them to play a variety of playstyles, and at their best, all-rounders tend to be a jack-of-all-trades, utilizing the best tools for any given meta. Even though all-rounders are the most flexible archetype, they can sometimes fall into the Master of None category. For instance, they block well, but they can't ever outblock most Control heroes. They can hit hard, but they may fall behind in the rushdown race. They may have some setup cards, but they aren't nearly as powerful as those specifically designed for setup heroes. However, all-rounders can update the cards in their decks to shore up common weaknesses or target specific heroes in the meta. Now that we've covered Flesh and Blood's building blocks and hero archetypes, the final step is to take a look at the heroes. A lot of people suggest picking a hero whose aesthetic looks cool, but it's also important that whichever hero you pick also fits your preferred playstyle. This particular step that I'm about to highlight may be shocking to some of you card game players, but the most important part here is to read the hero card. There are several important pieces to consider. Starting at the top of the card is the hero's name. Note that multiple heroes can share the same name. For example, Arachne Huntsman, Arachne Marionette, and Arachne Slip Through the Cracks are all different versions of Arachne. Heroes with the same name also share specializations, which provide unique strengths not available to any other characters in the world of Wraith. No one else, besides Shiana of course, can access Arachne's Agents of Chaos through Mask of Deceit, or give contract cards Go Again in the same way that Coercive Tendency does. While specializations aren't necessarily auto-includes, they can tell you a lot about what types of cards a hero wants to run. For instance, most of the Agents of Chaos synergize with stealth cards, while Coercive Tendency only synergizes with contract cards. Therefore, if your deck doesn't have many contract cards, you may not want to run Coercive Tendency. However, if it does, this specialization is a powerful tool that can give your character a huge advantage in certain games. Moving to the bottom of the hero card are the character's class and talent. While I mentioned this briefly during the first step, a hero's class provides a large chunk of their card pool and defines their core strengths and weaknesses. For example, assassins use stealth and contract attacks. These have low resource costs, but lack natural go again and have relatively weak attack values as a trade-off for powerful on-hit effects. On top of that, assassins have attack reactions to make sure those attacks hit, as well as daggers and traps to further disrupt opponents. Because all three versions of Arachne share the same class, we can expect them to interact with the assassin identity in some way or another. While Assassin Huntsman is a non-talented assassin, both Slip Through the Cracks and Marionette are Chaos assassins. Both of these talented versions of Arachne have access to the Chaos card pool, and the talent imbues both of them with random effects that have a chance of being either beneficial or detrimental based on the matchup and state of the game. Even though class and talent guide how heroes play Flesh and Blood, hero abilities are the best way to evaluate how someone will play the game. Now that we have all the pieces, I'll walk you through how to use hero abilities to tell us whether a hero is more inclined to play a rushdown, all-rounder, control, or setup game plan. For this example, we'll look at Arachne Huntsman, Slip Through the Cracks, Marionette, and New Alluring Desire. Even though the Assassin class provides many control elements, each of these assassin heroes fits a different archetype, shaped by their hero abilities. I'll give you a few seconds to try to figure out which one is the rushdown, the all-rounder, the control, and the setup hero, but feel free to pause the video to take a closer look at the hero abilities. Let's start out with the rushdown hero. They like to play a lot of powerful attacks on their own turn, so they love access to free action points, resource points, or power, even if it comes at a cost. Fitting well into this example is Arachne Slip Through the Cracks. Their ability says that the first attack with stealth each turn gets go again. The free go again lets them play much more aggressively than the other heroes. However, their extra action points each turn come at a cost, as their chaotic hero ability also benefits other assassin opponents with stealth attacks. Since they also have 2 less life than the default hero, they have a hard time playing a more control-oriented playstyle. Moving towards a more defensive playstyle, control heroes aim to prevent their opponents from doing their powerful things. They typically do this by stifling their opponent's access to Fab's core building blocks of action points, resource points, intellect, or power. Arachne Huntsman's ability fits well into this category. Whenever they play a card with contract, they may look at the top card of their opponent's deck, deciding whether they want to leave it on top or sink it to the bottom. Huntsman's ability helps them to control their opponent's deck by preventing them from drawing powerful cards or leaving them on top to guarantee that the contract is completed and the power card is banished. Somewhere in between are all-rounder heroes, who aren't as fast as rushdown heroes, nor as tanky as control heroes. However, they thrive when adapting their attacks and blocks based on the matchup. Arachne Marionette's ability fits this quite well, since they need to mark their opponent to give their stealth attacks +1 damage and a go again on hit. This lets Marionette thrive in a mid-range plan, making opponents second guess if, when, and how to block. Additionally, if their opponent is still marked at the end of Marionette's turn, the randomly chosen Agent of Chaos spans from fully offensive with Redback to fully defensive with Trapdoor. However, the randomness requires good Marionette players to adapt on the fly to maximize whichever Agent of Chaos they become when their opponent is marked. Using Process of Elimination, you can probably tell that New Alluring Desire falls under the setup archetype. This is because setup heroes generally like to build up zones outside of their hand to generate value over time, until they can cash in on that value for 1 or 2 gigantic payoff turns. The first part of New's ability helps her set up value, banishing any action cards that defend her stealth attacks when the chain link resolves. This naturally generates a large number of action cards in her opponent's banish zone. However, once she is transcended, she can pitch an inner chi to unlock the payoff piece of her ability. It not only banishes the top card of her opponent's deck if it's a blue, it not only allows her to play her opponent's banished blues as if they were a second hand, but it also allows her to play them without paying any resource costs, even if it's Macho Grande, Cerebellum Processor, or Levels of Enlightenment. New's ability combined with her signature Beckoning Mistblades allow her to have massive turns against some heroes. She's able to play far more cards than typically allowed in a single turn, making her an incredibly powerful setup hero. While each of these assassins share the generic and assassin card pools, their abilities drastically change how they prefer to play the game. However, keep in mind that many heroes can be built in ways that support the other 3 archetypes. In fact, New can be played as a control hero with Count Your Blessings to better tank hits, while pitching Inner Cheese to Mask of Recurring Nightmares to banish even more cards. On the other hand, Arachne Marionette can run lists that are more aggressively or defensively slanted. Most importantly, the hero abilities are signposts showing you where their natural strengths lie. After finishing this video, try to take a look at a few heroes that look interesting to you and see if you can identify whether they prefer to play Rushdown, All-Rounder, Control, or Setup game plans. Alternatively, try to find which heroes match your preferred archetype and try them out to see if your guesses were correct. At the end of the day, choosing the right hero in Flesh and Blood can make all the difference in your enjoyment of the game. We covered the game's building blocks, hero archetypes, and hero evaluation process as a whole. I hope today's video has provided you with the tools that you need in order to choose your next hero in Flesh and Blood. However, if you have any questions at all, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. If you found this video helpful, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe for more content like this. Thank you all for watching, and I'll teach you in the next one.